All right, test time. Feeling those pre-test jitters? Don't sweat it, we've got you covered. Today's deep dive is all about acing, that social studies exam specifically that journey from our early ancestors as nomads to the rise of farming and everything in between.
We're talking millions of years condensed into some key concepts, and we'll make sure you not only understand the what, but the why. It's about connecting those dots and seeing the bigger picture of human history.
Music to my ears. But before we even get to the test material, I've always wondered, how do we actually know about a time period before written records? It's not like we can interview a caveman, right?
You'd be surprised how much we can learn from the past even without written records. Think of it like detective work. Archaeologists are our on-the-ground investigators. They're out there excavating ancient settlements, studying the tools, pottery, even the leftover scraps of food. It's like piecing together a puzzle, but instead of cardboard, it's clues from civilizations long gone.
So it's archaeology for the tangible stuff.
Yeah.
What about understanding the people themselves, their beliefs, their culture? That seems way more difficult to uncover.
You're right. That's where things get really interesting. Anthropologists are like cultural detectives. They take those artifacts that archaeologists dig up and use them to understand the societies that created them. Everything from burial rituals to cave paintings can tell us a story about how people lived, interacted, and saw the world around them.
Okay, so we've got archaeologists and anthropologists, but there's another archaeologist I remember from textbooks, paleontologists. Aren't they the fossil folks? And what do fossils have to do with understanding cultures?
Good catch. Paleontologists are critical, especially when we're talking about a time period so far back. See, fossils aren't just dinosaur bones. They're any preserved remains of ancient life. Plants, animals, and yes, even our human ancestors. By studying things like skeletal structures, paleontologists help us trace the evolution of humans, how we went from walking on all fours to walking upright.
Which, if I remember correctly, was a pretty big deal. Didn't that change everything?
You're telling me that shift to walking upright, what we call bipedalism, was a game changer for our ancestors.
Huh?
Imagine, hands that were once needed for walking are now free. Suddenly, you can carry food back to your family, make and use tools, and explore your environment in a whole new way.
It's like that one change unlocked a whole new set of possibilities. It makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
Precisely. And it's not just about walking. As our ancestors evolved, their brains were getting bigger too, like 3 times bigger. Now imagine the possibilities that unlocked complex thought, problem-solving language even. It's like our ancestors were leveling up in real life.
Okay, that's seriously cool. But let's get back to tools for a second.
Yeah.
And what I remember learning early, human tools were pretty basic, right? I mean, we're talking rocks and sticks, not exactly smartphones.
Don't underestimate the ingenuity of early humans. We're talking about the Stone Age here, and you're right, it wasn't all fancy gadgets. The early Stone Age, starting around 2.6 million years ago, was all about simple but effective tools like choppers and hand axes. These were the Swiss Army knives of the prehistoric world.
So even back then, they were resourceful, figuring out how to make do with what they had.
Yeah.
But their tools did become more advanced over time.
Absolutely. By the Middle Stone Age, we see more refined tools like spear points. This tells us a lot about their hunting strategies. Imagine being able to take down larger prey from a distance. That's next-level hunting.
Talk about a game changer. What about the late Stone Age? Those tools must have been pretty impressive.
The Late Stone Age brought about a truly remarkable invention, the bow and arrow. Think about the engineering involved, the ingenuity it took to conceptualize and craft such a tool. And this innovation wasn't just about hunting either. It had a ripple effect on their entire way of life.
Okay, bows and arrows. Now that's impressive. It's amazing to think about how these early innovations paved the way for the societies we live in today. But there's another game changer we have to talk about, right? One that quite literally changed the game.
Fire. Mastering this powerful force around 400,000 years ago was a defining moment for our ancestors. And it wasn't just about staying warm or scaring off predators.
Yeah, I can only imagine the impact. I mean, talk about revolutionizing mealtime. No more raw meat and veggies.
Exactly. Fire meant cooked food, which meant easier digestion, and some scientists believe contributed to those bigger brains we were talking about earlier. But it goes even deeper than that. Imagine those early humans gathered around a flickering fire, sharing stories, strengthening social bonds. Fire wasn't just about survival, it became the heart of their social lives.
You know, thinking about it that way makes fire seem almost magical, like this central force that brought people together. But there's another thing we haven't talked about, something even more mysterious in a way.
You talk about language, right? It's incredible.
It really is. We take it for granted now. But the ability to communicate complex thoughts is what truly sets humans apart.
Absolutely. And while we might never know exactly when or how language first emerged, those changes in throat structure and brain regions that paleontologists have observed in the fossil record, those are pretty strong hints that our ancestors were hardwired for speech.
That's fascinating. So we've got our ancestors walking upright, making increasingly complex tools, controlling fire, and communicating with each other. What's next on their evolutionary to-do list?
Well, around 80,000 years ago, they decided it was time for a change of scenery. A pretty significant one, in fact.
Wait, are you talking about the great human migration out of Africa? That always seems so mysterious to me.
The very same. And it is one of the most fascinating chapters in human history.
Okay, so our ancestors decide to leave the nest, so to speak, and venture out of Africa. What prompted this massive journey? Was it like a prehistoric go west moment?
Not quite a gold rush, but there were definitely some compelling reasons to hit the road. Imagine Africa going through a period of significant climate change leading to drier conditions and scarcer resources. This kind of environmental pressure likely acted as a push factor, encouraging those early humans to seek out more hospitable environments.
Makes sense. Survival often comes down to adapting to change, even for early humans. But it wasn't just about escaping hardship, was it? Wasn't there also a sense of adventure, a curiosity about what lay beyond the horizon?
I think you're spot on. Imagine those early humans looking out at the vastness of the world and feeling that pull of the unknown. Whether it was the allure of new hunting grounds or more temperate climates or simply the thrill of exploration, this pull factor likely played a role in their decision to migrate. And remember, this wasn't a quick trip. We're talking thousands of years, multiple waves of migration with different groups taking different routes, adapting as they went.
Wow, that's a serious commitment to seeing the world. So as they're migrating all over the globe, they're still living that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, right? What did their day-to-day life actually look like during this period?
Picture this. Small, nomadic bands of maybe 20 to 100 people constantly on the move. They were following herds of animals foraging for seasonal plants, always searching for their next meal and a safe place to rest.
That sounds incredibly challenging. Always having to be on the move, never knowing where your next meal is coming from. What do they do for shelter?
They were incredibly resourceful. Think caves, naturally occurring rock shelters or temporary structures built from branches, animal hides, whatever they could find to protect themselves from the elements. And despite this challenging nomadic way of life, they still found time for creativity.
You're talking about the cave paintings, right? It always blows my mind to think that in the midst of the struggle for survival, early humans were creating these incredible works of art.
Those cave paintings are a testament to the human spirit. And they weren't just random doodles. We see incredibly sophisticated depictions of animals, hunting scenes, even abstract patterns that suggest a rich spiritual life, perhaps even early forms of storytelling. It challenges our assumptions about what it meant to be primitive.
It really does. It makes you realize that these were people not so different from us.
Mhm.
But this whole hunter-gatherer way of life, this nomadic existence, was on the verge of a radical shift, right? What can you tell us about the Neolithic Revolution, that moment everything changed?
Imagine, after 2 million years of relying on nature for sustenance, humans discover they can grow their own food. That's the Neolithic Revolution in a nutshell.
That's huge. It's like they suddenly unlocked a new level of control over their world and their destiny.
Exactly. Around 12,000 years ago, something clicked. Humans began cultivating plants and domesticating animals. And this wasn't just about new techniques for getting food. It was a seismic shift in human history that the ripple effects are still felt today.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Break it down for me. How did agriculture change everything?
Think about it. With a more dependable food supply, those nomadic tribes didn't have to chase after their next meal. They could settle in one place, build more permanent homes.
Which is what paved the way for villages and eventually even cities.
You got it. And with those larger settlements came a new set of challenges and opportunities, leading to even more innovation.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from those first steps upright to the rise of agriculture. My brain's feeling a bit like a history textbook right now.
It's a lot to take in. How about we do a compare and contrast to solidify everything? We're talking Paleolithic versus Neolithic, those two major periods in early human history.
Love it. A good head-to-head matchup always helps make things clear. So Paleolithic versus Neolithic. Where do we even begin?
Let's start with the most obvious difference. Food. In the Paleolithic, you're relying on what nature provides. Hunting, gathering, constantly moving to find your next meal. But the Neolithic, they've cracked the code with agriculture.
Right. Domestication is a game changer. No more chasing after herds. You've got a steady food supply right outside your door.
Exactly. And that one change impacts everything else. Think about shelter. In the Paleolithic, you're building temporary shelters, caves, anything to protect you from the elements. But with agriculture comes permanent settlements.
No more packing up your hut every time the food runs out.
Exactly. We start seeing houses made of mud brick, even early forms of villages.
Which must have been mind-blowing for those early humans. I bet it changed how they interacted with each other, too.
Absolutely. The Neolithic saw the rise of larger, more complex communities. And with those larger populations, you start to see specialization of labor.
Because now you've got a food surplus. Not everyone has to focus on just finding the next meal. Some people can become craftspeople, traders, even leaders.
Exactly. And those specialized roles lead to further innovation trade networks, even the beginnings of social hierarchies. It's really the foundation for civilization as we know it.
Wow. So the Neolithic Revolution wasn't just about new farming techniques. It was a catalyst for this massive societal shift.
And it all started with those early humans figuring out how to work with nature, how to adapt, invent, and thrive. It's a pretty remarkable story.
It really is. And a good reminder that sometimes the most profound changes start with a single spark of innovation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as you gear up for that test, remember, it's not just about memorizing dates and names. Think about the why behind the changes. What were those early humans trying to solve, and how did their ingenuity shape the world we live in today?
Great advice. All right, listeners, go ace those tests. And remember, even those early humans could master fire, agriculture, and even migration across continents. You got this.